and decided that we're different from this other set of islands, this other landmass that's Jamaica. So they're going to be Jamaicans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Somebody made it all up, and we just rolling with it.
So let's get into the whole policing people's bodies. I back in my day, I wrote up a couple of traffic tickets or two. She looked at me like,
Here we go.
Yo, the dead part. That's the dead part for me.
Yeah, we don't want to do anything to scare your children. That's the last thing we want to do. We don't want to scare anybody.
The tourists come over to chill on the beach, but they don't come over the hill where we sleep. We got nightmares and they got fantasies. No sanity, it's just insanity. My mommy hoping nothing happens to me.
So how do we begin this illustrious tale? Should I start with the lead up? Hold on, actually, let me bring this up closer. You build a ship as a quiet. But should I start up with the lead up first? First, y'all wondering why I look like this. Well, we're going to talk about something very interesting today. It's been like a topic on my mind for a long time, but I wanted to get the right person to talk about it with. Our legendary guest on the right of me. But before that, I want to just say, thank you again for coming and sit back, relax, and we're about to have a good time. Ready?
Yeah, man, looking forward to it.
So, welcome to another episode of Erryting Kool. This is the niggas of Nassau, Lord Jalen Willard, San Antonio Alexander at your service. We have the party at 1 in the back.
As always, PG, aka P Giovanni, aka PG13, aka PG13, aka your favorite non-bay, aka hidden in plain sight, aka too many AKAs. There's a lot to say.
Yes. And we have another guest. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Alicia Wallace, gender expert and director of Equality Bahamas. No AKAs.
No, wait, man, you need an AKA, probably like Black Widow or something like that.
Like what?
Say Black Widow.
Black Widow. That wouldn't. I don't know, like bad bitch or something like that.
No.
I mean, that's your AKA.
I don't know.
So on every episode, we like to have a special segment called the Bahamian word, phrase, or saying of the day. And we always give our guests that privilege of doing such thing. So you could give us today your Bahamian word, phrase, or saying.
Boy.
Did we have boy before? I feel like we did.
You had it before?
Yeah, we did have boy.
Okay.
We talked about the different versions of boy.
So you need something fresh that nobody
Something
said
fresh.
before.
Anything Bahamian will come to your mind.
Oh, gosh. You didn't prepare me for this so I could think about it ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Everything I could think of is so... We have a lot of misogynistic that we say. So I'm trying to steer away from those.
No. Man, go ahead. Okay, so what would it be non-misogynistic? What you would like to use? Or what you think?
A non-misogynistic
Yeah.
one.
I got a question for you after this. Go ahead.
No, but we're going to
Okay.
be in big trouble.
I hope you're ready to edit out big gaps because it's taking me so long to think on the
No,
spot.
no,
That's
That's a
perfect.
part of
That's
the
perfect
show.
content, right?
Oh, Lord, everybody can watch
Yeah.
me sweat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Bahamian thing. What do we say a lot? Okay, practice an ass.
Yeah, I don't think we had that.
We never had that.
Right.
So tell for the international viewers, tell them what does that mean.
you're just doing foolishness. You're not making any sense. And it's almost like you intentionally being stupid.
Ah. Right.
Okay. We about to really have fun because
Yeah.
I mean I have a game plan, right? And I about to go by that game plan. And we about to get it into your early beginnings and everything. But I just want to start off. Yeah, tweet today. I was like, but she about to be mad at us, bro.
Oh boy, okay.
No, because a lot of the people that, yeah, I would say, I wouldn't say they are detractors or whatever, but a lot of names you have called have graced our state.
Oh.
So I was like, oh, flip.
Everybody tuning in, right?
Today.
Oh, the names.
Huh?
The names of people?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I was like, yeah, today about to be good. But let's start from the beginning. Let's start about like, what was life for you growing up in the Bahamas?
Mm-hmm.
Getting into writing and then becoming basically an advocate activist.
Well, I grew up like most of us in a blended situation, like my parents, whatever, but also so many other family members pitching in to help to raise the children. So spending a lot of time with older people in my family. So I always tell people I'm old people children, even though my parents aren't particularly old, but I grew up with my great aunt, my great grandmother. So I spent a lot of time with people like from their 60s to 100, basically. And, during that time, especially as I got older in my teens, starting to see the difference between the ways that I was raised versus my brother. Even though we were growing up in the same house, being taken care of by the same people, the sort of differences between the things that I could do versus what he could do, regardless of any kind of skills or anything like that we had. And I think that started to get my wheels turning a little bit. And then I went off to school and got to have different experiences and meet people with different identities, different ideas, different religions, and sort of expanded my mind even more. So when I came back, it was almost like a culture shock,
As
being
is
like,
for
what,
everybody.
like what is going on in this place? And I guess like for most people who move in that direction of activism and advocacy, there was sort of a moment of just being like, yeah, that's enough. I can't just sit around with this anymore. And it was with one of those names that I called.
So this happened within the last 10 years or?
Yeah, 2014 is when I really
Okay.
was
Saw
like,
the
this is what
light.
I want to do
And that's
full time, basically.
Okay, because that's a very interesting time, and we're gonna get to that later. But I think every time when I was talking about this the other day, like when you travel the world and you see how other people live, you start to gain a grand perspective on things. And when you come back to a society that is your own,
Yeah.
and you see the things that can be changed, then you be like, all right, how can I affect change to shift? Because certain thinking is causing us to stagnate as a society. So I can really feel and understand that. So 2014, actually, because you got that quick. So 2014, what exactly happened in 2014 to make you be like, okay, this is the straw that broke the camel's back? Like, what was the lead up to then? Like, especially for the viewers, like, break down what was your lead up to like where it was, because you had this awareness, you just noticed like, okay, every time I go out, I get hit on for no reason, or what different instances and stuff like that.
Yeah. So street harassment, which is sexual harassment in a public space, was always something that made me, I guess as a child, it made me uncomfortable. But as I got older, it just pissed me off more and more and more. And I think a friend of mine saw a video of this woman who was like making fun of people who harass. And the video was called Creeps on the Streets by Lacey Green. She was a YouTuber at the time. I don't know if she still does that. But she sort of did a spoof of what they're like. And then she plugged an organization that focuses on ending street harassment. So my friend sent this to me and I was like, what? And they basically help other people to run their own site as a part of the organization in different parts of the world.
Okay.
So I was like, yeah, let me sign up. We should do this. And she later on, she told me, she was like, yeah, I sent it to you because I knew you were going to do it. I knew you were going to pick it up and make it a thing. So that's how I started Hollaback Bahamas. And to do that, we had to go through a few weeks of training with Hollaback, the main branch in New York City, online training. And we were set to launch in April. I think it was supposed to be around the time of International Anti-Street Harassment Week, which is always in April. But before we even got a chance to launch in March, we got, there was press coverage that Leslie Miller, who was then the MP for Tall Pines, had made a non-joke about domestic violence. So I think the debate was going on about fishermen and how they were being treated by the government. And to draw a comparison, he started talking about how, the government is abusing fishermen, but it's the same as him abusing somebody else. And he started to talk about how he had this girlfriend who he used to abuse and basically was saying that she liked it. And he kind of put it off like a joke, and everyone in Parliament laughed or didn't say anything at all. And the video footage showed, people sort of just sitting there uncomfortably, and you could hear kind of people saying, oh, no, man, stop. And the speaker kept saying, we know you're joking. We know you're joking. And he said, no, I'm not joking. I'm serious. And he kept going on, and there was more laughter. And famously, Picewell Forbes was really caught like throwing his head back, having a great old time. And so that really, really pissed me off. I was like, what type of shit is this, where you could stand up in Parliament and talk about how you used to abuse someone, make it seem like it was their fault, make it into a joke, and nobody calls you out on it.
Wasn't this around the same time Loretta had slapped a member of Parliament?
I don't remember how that is in the timing.
So, right.
I think probably like
I think that might have been
2014.
after.
This happened like 2013, 2016, like around.
I think it was probably after this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, really? No one's going to say anything at all? And I wrote a letter to the editor in the newspaper, and it got published. And then people started contacting me and being like, what are we going to do? So we started a coalition of 5 organizations. We came together. We started Coalition to End Gender-Based Violence and Discrimination. And we held a protest in Rawson Square. We put together a petition. We had an open forum also in Rawson Square. People could come and share their stories and talk about some ideas that they have, ways that we can address this issue in the country. And we also put forward demands to the government, including a public education campaign to let people know about domestic violence, because it's always been a huge issue here. Our numbers have always been extremely high, and we know that most people don't even report. So what are we going to do about this? When are we going to start talking about it? When are we going to direct people to the resources? So that's what that whole thing was about, and that was my first
aha moment
thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I looked on your profile, so I was like, what exactly is a gender expert? And why?
Yeah.
Is that something that you created, or that's the real term title?
No, it's a real thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So explain that to me, and part of my ignorance would be here to learn.
Right.
Yeah, so we know that gender, hopefully we know that by now that gender is a social construct. We treat it like it's something that's biological, but it's not. Even sex isn't biological, but that's that would be a whole podcast on its own. But these are all things that people have made up. And gender was made up to basically force people into boxes. So based on your visible sexual organ, we decide how you're going to move through society, what kinds of opportunities you're going to have, what your relationships are going to look like, your role that you're going to play in society. So that's how we came up with, women do this and men do that. So a gender expert is well aware of these dynamics between people of different genders, how they have come to be, how society functions, how it serves or does not serve us, and are equipped to look at, for example, laws and policies that are in place and see how they're affecting people of different genders, to be able to make recommendations on legal reform, on policy, projects, how to implement projects to ensure that they are affecting people of different genders equally, or addressing specific needs of people of specific genders. So it's taking a pretty holistic look at where we are, what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and making sure that people of different genders are impacted as needed.
Okay. So because, and knowing that I was going to invite you here, I extensively prepared and immersed myself in the exact knowledge and terminologies and things for the last month. So I was, going into social groups and on Clubhouse and having talks on Facebook and this and that, and like, all right, this is what's going on. And then, oftentimes, I think in some rooms people would say, okay, yeah, gender and sex is a social constructs, but then they'll ask, okay, so before a civilized society, wouldn't you say the environment dictated who did what? When we was like in nature before, like less than 200 years ago, based on, I wouldn't say male and female, but who is more disposed look at me, to, okay, what somebody would have to be bringing in life and nurturing other smaller life forms, and then the other person would have to be cultivating and producing the environment. So how does that factor into that whole?
So we could look at, we don't even have to go very far back, right? We could look at pre-war. Pre-war, yeah.
Okay.
Where basically men worked. Women stayed at home. And the idea is that women didn't work. Is that true?
Not necessarily. Okay. I think more so in Western civilization, we had these notions of men work and women didn't work. So that's why I asked.
Yeah.
Like, if we go back to...
So we have this idea that people generally will say that women didn't work during that time, which is completely untrue. Yeah. Because if women didn't work, men wouldn't have been able to work. Exactly. Right? Women enabled men to go outside of the home to work by doing the work that was needed to be done inside the home. Right? So making sure that their husbands and their children were able to eat something every day, making sure the clothes were clean, the uniform or whatever is laid out for work the next day, making sure that there's a space to rest, the house is clean. All that is work, right? When it's somebody other than your wife or your mother doing that work, you pay them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? That's work. And then the war happened. There was no one there to do certain things. So they pulled women in. Well, we need women. We need women to come work, fill in this gap, which is what women have been doing for decades and for centuries, right? Just showing up to fill in the gaps when the men can't do it. And it's not that women aren't able to do it. It's just that it's preferred that men do the work outside of the home and control the money and all that. Like there's all these things are layered. A lot of it is about power and control. And to add to that, Black women have always worked. Right? There was never a time when Black women weren't working. So even our idea about the fact that this thing of men work, women don't, is a very white angle.
Yeah, because I always was saying,
because we were enslaved.
Exactly.
And then we entered relationships with Black men who weren't being paid the same as white men. And so you needed the two incomes to make a household run. So Black women have always worked. So there are all these layers.
Yeah, because that's how I always argue is that, okay, with the times we live in and the more new information that we're getting, we're being informed about, because everybody is their own individual and subscribe to a different philosophy. But overarching, like certain social groups then have certain issues like other social groups. Like you said, okay, most Black people on the Western Hemisphere, if we were enslaved for 500 years, and then in less than 100 years, we got all these rights to where we can work independently from outside of other people, then we wouldn't have the same qualms as other societies where, how they live now is how they was living all those years ago and how their social dynamics was. But ours, especially in the Western Hemisphere, it shifted so much, especially in the last 150 years. So it went from, okay, we don't make enough to sustain for one person to sustain the whole household. Then, when first wave feminism came around, was okay, the women's suffrage movement and women's rights to vote, and et cetera, et cetera. Then, when you had second wave feminism in like around the civil rights era, after the civil rights in the late 60s, 70s, it was about, hey, if I want to be a housewife or if I want to be a college professor, I should have that choice. and I shouldn't be forced to be relegated to just staying at home.
Yeah.
So in the span of just that alone, from the 70s to the women's suffrage movements, a lot of them started in the 10s and 20s, if I'm correct. So in the span of 50 years, for our community, that social dynamics had to switch drastically, because it was like, okay, first I'm now used to having this dynamic, and then more things was applied, and I have to shift now. So now we are having what some may say is the third wave feminism movement. It's like, okay, well, these things apply, and you got to understand, because even though we have made such progresses over the last 100 years, there's still certain social issues and social cons we still have, and I take this dead to heart, because again, I have a lot of female friends that tell me about, okay, yeah, they're being mistreated this way, they're being disregarded this way, they're are actually subjected to sexual abuse and sexual harassment and these things. So now we're trying to correct that behavior and then so back to what I was saying, a lot of these things is like, when we get to a point, we have to switch, get new information, correct this bad behavior, and do a lot of unlearning. What would you say to that?
Yeah, it's constant learning and adjusting and adapting and having conversations with people, because a lot of what we're experiencing seems to be people are completely unaware of it until they hear about it, right? Like if you on Bahamian Twitter, then you would have seen last summer, probably around this time, when people were talking about, women were talking about their experiences of harassment and various forms of sexual violence, and just sort of talking about it vaguely. And some of them might have been more specific about what happened to them, but not saying who. And so all these men were like, tell us who it is. Because if that's, somebody who I know, then we finish, like he done. And then when women actually decided to start calling names, very few of those men stayed supportive. Some of them were like, oh, don't do that. And there was one in particular, don't do that, man. He just trying to start his business. He just trying to get on his feet and stuff, So all of a sudden it's a switch when you find that it is somebody close to you. And so it's very difficult to have these conversations and be honest, because people are committing to being supportive, but when they really find out what's going on and who's involved, it's a hands-off bunch of shit, right? Like you ain't really coming through for me the way you said you were going to come through for me. So it makes it really hard for people to be able to share their stories. It's hard for people to come forward and make reports, so we have those statistics, and then it's hard for us to prove our case. Because then people will say, well, like with marital rape, having all these conversations about marital rape, and the first thing people want to know is, well, how many women who married getting raped by their husband anyway? Y'all don't have no numbers. Where's your statistics? But if it's not against the law, how they gonna report it? And if they don't report it, how we can get the numbers? But we know that this is happening, because if people getting raped while they're dating, why do you think it's going to be different in marriage?
That's so true.
So we have to keep having these conversations, and we have to keep pushing people outside of their comfort zone. And, there are a lot of people who will say, well, they are pro-woman, they are pro-Black women, this and that. Or people will say, well, I'm not homophobic, but they'll spew homophobia all the time, right? Just today, during this whole Olympic thing, when people made homophobic comments about the Bahamas getting the gold and whatever, what do people respond with? Oh, Queen, that's somebody said, talk to the bitch who your ma say is your father or something like that. So, okay, so this person being homophobic, so you're going to be homophobic back. And then you're going to go on the timeline and say, yeah, we're not going to stand for that. You're not going to be homophobic to us. Okay, but you're going to be homophobic to other people. So a lot of times we're trying to use, Audre Lorde said, the master's tool will never dismantle the master's house, but we're consistently trying to use these same tools to dismantle the houses of patriarchy and misogyny and homophobia and all these other systems that we're working against.
That's very good. So tell the people about, because I always used to question why, go just backtracking back to Hollaback, the whole cat calling thing. Because as a man, I never thought that it actually worked. The whole you walking now, hey, oi, sexy, come here, da 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 da. I'm like, this is actually what. And I had access on my WhatsApp report. One woman messaged me and she said she liked things like that. So I was like, oh, so I guess this works on, because I'm like, I don't understand why the baby men consistently do this. And most of the times I say rejection. So I'm like, why y'all keep on doing this? And then the women keep on saying, this makes me uncomfortable. But y'all still doing it.
Yeah, that's the point. The point is to make women uncomfortable. The point isn't to get a date. Because if that was the point, then you would say good morning to me when I could see you and not when I walk past you. Like, it happens to me all the time. The people will speak to me after I have passed them. And it's like, I know that you're not trying to have a conversation with me. Not that I would want to have a conversation with you. You're a random stranger and I'm trying to do whatever the fuck to do. But it tells me what your intention is.
What if they just, I feel like it's a scare tactic. Like their fear of rejection. And it's like, I'm going to say this to see what happens. And then if I get rejected, I can make a whole spectacle.
It's a power thing. It's a power and and control thing. It's like, oh, look what I could do. Look how I can make you uncomfortable. Because they laugh, especially if it's men in groups. Once you've walked past, you can hear them laughing, talking, whatever. So it's funny to them. It's a game. It's a sport. It's not meant to actually result in a real conversation or an engagement with a person. Because when men want to engage you, they seem to figure out how to do it.
You think men would benefit more that having more platonic women friends to understand and see how women like feel about certain things?
To be honest with you, I don't really care what men would benefit from. I think women would benefit if...
There it is. Go ahead.
Y'all have enough benefits. Y'all good. But I don't think that it's a mystery. I really don't think that there is a knowledge gap. I think it's a refusal to acknowledge the power differential and the effect that has on people on the opposite end. Because while you hold the power, it's fun, right? There have been a couple of videos. I'm trying to remember which magazine it was. It was like Cosmopolitan or something. But they set up this thing where they would bring in men with their daughters. And I think there was another one where they brought in men with their wives or girlfriends to watch footage of their daughter, wife, or girlfriend just walking along the street and being catcalled. And just watching these men be upset and get all like possessive over their women was really interesting. And they were all like, oh, yeah, like, yeah, I didn't know that it was like, I don't want people doing this to my daughter. I don't want that to happen to my wife. I want my girlfriend to be able to go out and not have to worry about her. And it's like, so many men are only concerned about things if it happens to someone who is in their own circle or someone who they perceive as belonging to them.
What about care? Like, what if you care about that person? I mean, it can be care too, though. Not really having a more so possessive mind, but I think
you might not see it as possession, right? Because it's the same thing as a lot of women will say that I have a boyfriend or I have a husband, or wear a ring on the ring finger to try to deflect, because we already understand that men respect other men and other men's belongings. So me making you feel like I belong to someone else, it gives me a little bit more room. You're less likely to bother me. And you have some jerks, the super jerks, who'll be like, well, he ain't here, right? But a lot will sort of like,
the jerks.
Yeah. Some will kind of back off, or at least be more cautious when they realize that, oh, you belong to somebody else. Like, somebody else will fuck me up for you. And then even like the men who feel like they're on our side, like, I love women. Women are great. I wouldn't want this to happen to my daughter. Like, why do it have to be your daughter?
It also sort of go into pretty privilege a little bit too. Because I treat all women great, but then you only treat the ones that you see, like, look as attractive. So it's like, I'll keep the hot ones, the hot mamas
Protected.
The ones I think look good, cool, like, yeah, but like, if anybody mess with them, I can get on them. But the ones that I think, whatever happened, happened.
Yeah, you think it's that way and not the opposite?
As far as the but you mean the privilege ones? You think? Yeah, I would say so, because I think the men, okay, and not a double standard. This the hypocrisy in it. Yeah, you would say you care about women, but only the pretty ones, the only ones you think is attractive.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. But to me, the pretty ones are the ones who face the most harassment, right? Or the least likely to want to be in public spaces because they get a particular type of attention.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and what he's saying is men would be more inclined to protect those women in turn from
Yeah, 'cause it's like a
other
dual-
men. Right.
It's a dual thing because they're the ones that most harass.
Right.
Yeah.
But then
But at
that's
the
the
same
one
time,
they would
who can be
most
most
likely to go
protected
to
too.
bat for.
Right.
Okay.
That's what he's saying.
Because I see a lot of
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
I see a lot of victim blaming too, right? Like, well, you done know you fine. Why you going out like that? Or you should have told me come with you.
That's
Like,
probably by
you
the
know?
same man who harassing her though. From another man would probably protect him. That's what he's trying. I think
But
that's what he's trying to say too.
I think sometimes the protective person, like you being protective of the person who you care about, who you consider pretty, right? It could also manifest in a way that's like, why would you do that? You should have tell me you wanted to go to the fire. I would have take you. So this wouldn't happen to you. You know what I mean? Like it's coming out of the goodness of your heart, so called, but it's coming out in that sort of, it's your fault that this happened to you kind of way. So maybe it's different. Maybe it's different groups of people who behave in different ways. Like one group of people would sort of blame and one group would say, I can't believe this happened to
think-
my pretty friend. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think the same ones that doing are harassing
Yeah.
would do the same thing in the protecting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a switch of behavior.
So it's that thing. It's that
Yeah.
these women are mine.
yeah.
These ones are off limits.
Or I want to be with her, or I want to, even if it's not with her particularly, I want to gain a woman that somewhat looks like this. So I'm going to show to other women that I protect a woman that resembles this attractiveness or whatever. Like it's a weird dichotomy.
Like you're creating
Yeah.
like a platform for yourself. Like, look at me, the savior of the
Yeah, the
light
Superman.
skinned, green eye gals.
Yeah. So let's take a quick commercial break. And then, Erryting Kool is now sponsored by Less Juice.
Hey.
I drinking on that vitamin S, but we're
That's
going to
it.
be right back after these messages. Why you just clap?
Well then.
Oh man! So we back from a short, quick commercial break. Don't forget Less Juice. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram. I don't know if they have a Twitter, but got some good juice. But we back. But before we get into PG, I have some quick questions.
Right. So in the Bahamian phrase and saying of the day, you said that we have a lot of misogynistic BS that we say. Do we have any feminist BS that we say? Or do you consider anything feminist that we say over there?
I didn't know the last part what you said.
I say, do we have a lot of feminists, or do you consider anything to be feminist that we say over here to be BS?
A misandrist.
Nothing that comes to mind right now. I have to think about it some more.
All right.
But most of our phrases reference women or vaginas in some way, and in like a deprecating way. I can't think of
true.
anything
Oh
off
no,
the top.
the main one is CYC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it could
mean,
easily be carry your ass,
definitely.
but it's very specifically something else.
Yeah,
right?
we go to the CYC more than
The
carry our ass for
CYC.
real.
Actually,
Yeah.
I was watching Joe Budden podcast one time, and I was listening to it a couple of weeks ago, and they was trying to get them to stop using that the women's part as a term to degrade or
Degrade
say
people.
you soft. So they came up. They found another term. I think the term is pusillanimous. Or yeah.
What?
So, yeah. So they was like, that ain't a real word, and then they switched it up, and it was like, okay, yeah, I see what this means. Da 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 da. Blah blah blah. But
Next one now.
yeah,
So-
go ahead.
If we're gonna consider gender as a social construct, then could we say that misogyny and feminism real? Are they real?
Are they real?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're real.
But yeah, but
largely
if we saying
because
if
of-
it's a social construct, gender is, then could they could they technically be real?
Yeah. Gender is still real, you know. Like we created it and we crafted it, but it's still real. It's like the fan, like somebody made it for it to be real.
Yeah, okay.
And a lot of these social constructs are built on each other. Like money isn't real. Money is a bunch of crap.
Yeah,
Just pieces of paper, you know.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And we give. I guess what you're saying is we give the value to the money.
Yes,
that makes
exactly.
it happen,
And we
right.
give different values to different genders,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
because of that, that's where the phrase of misogyny comes from, to sort of describe
Feminism
some of
comes
that.
from.
Yeah.
All right.
Because the whole social construct thing can mislead people to think, oh, so you're trying to say none of this, and we don't have no social order, and then it
Right.
becomes an inflammatory argument, not understanding what exactly you're trying to say. Like,
Yeah.
okay, these are the descriptions we made for ourselves, but yeah, they was made, but they exist, and people still subscribe to it.
Yeah.
So-
It's just important to know that somebody
Doesn't
made it up. It's not something that is inherent in us.
okay.
You know, like I'm a woman. Someone decided that I was a woman because when I was born, the doctor was like, I see a vagina, so it's a girl. And my parents were like, cool, it's a girl. So we're going to put dresses on her. We're going to let her hair grow. We're going to do all these different things.
Well-
We're going to try to keep her away from the boys. They decide, well, she's vulnerable, so we don't really want her going out late at night, and we want her to be accompanied by adults in a different way from we do our son,
All
right? So it sort of shapes the way you behave, the way you treat people, and all of those things are very real, but they're based on something that somebody decided on decades ago.
Well, do you consider yourself a woman?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, because like always to that is like I really wonder what would happen if none of us was born in a civilized society. We just was birthing, just be like, all right, do whatever you need to do. Like, what would the world really be like? You know.
Probably
People
actual.
would do what they need to do to survive, right?
Yeah, probably actual chaos.
So because I think human beings always like some form of order, bro. Because we like to have dominance over other groups or some hierarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean, you
whatever.
could look at the way people use astrology right now, right? Like, oh my God, I can't stand the cancers.
Yeah.
They're always crying and stuff like that. The way that we treat each other, different nationalities.
Yeah.
You know,
Tribal.
the way we feel about being Bahamian, like that's a made up thing. Like somebody just like was like, oh yeah, these are the islands, this country,
Mm.
and decided that we different from this other set of islands, this other landmass that's Jamaica. So they're going to be Jamaicans.
Mm. Yeah.
Somebody made it all up, and we just rolling with it.
So let's get into the whole policing people's bodies. You know, I back in my day, I wrote off a couple of traffic tickets or two. She looking at me like,
Here we go.
yo, the deadpan. That's the deadpan for me. But so because you ended off the last segment with there's a lot of victim blaming, and then you were saying even with the protector role, someone still say, well, you shouldn't have been dressed like that,
Right.
or you shouldn't have gone this place without me, or
Yeah.
what do you say to all of that? Like, what's your analysis, breakdown, and solution to all of that?
A lot of this is about making the world a smaller place for women and girls, and telling us what we can and cannot do, where we can and cannot go. And the world is designed in this way to sort of keep us in these corners, and people are playing to that. Men are playing into that. Boys are playing into that.
Maybe some
With-
other
with-
women playing into that too, eh? Some other women might be playing into that too.
Yeah.
There are
Because I
women
say a
playing
lot of
into it.
women-
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
interestingly, whenever we have these kinds of conversations, someone will inevitably say, but the women, da 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 da, right? But it's also important to make the connections between people and systems, and understanding that people are operating within a certain set of systems. So one of the things, I can go off track for a second, because this is something that really burns me up every time we
Oh,
talk
go
about
ahead,
the
go ahead.
referendum, right?
Go right
We
ahead.
gave another ISO.
Every time the referendum comes up and we start talking about the results,
right now.
Man.
Yeah.
somebody is going to come and say, well, the women voted against their own rights, and just leave it at that. And the message behind that is women don't want rights, or women are stupid, or women decided not to vote because they just don't care, right? But there's no looking at what's beneath the surface of that women are some of the strongest supporters of the church and of really horrible, misogynistic, patriarchal religious leaders, like, right? Who will tell you, how to vote and tell you that you don't deserve none of these rights and you should vote no, and will do all these little special sessions. You can find these little videos on YouTube, pulling up scriptures of the Bible and giving you weird interpretations to make you feel as though you don't have the right to pass on citizenship to your own child or to your spouse when somebody else could do the same thing.
Right.
And it's this system of control, because you are within the system of this religion, this church, this version of Christianity. You're paying into it. You're 10%. So you're investing in this. And so the product is something that you're basically buying.
I want to just poke a pin right there. Why do you think so many women support the church when a lot of men are leaving the church because they see the women overly
Because they're
support?
men of God. Because they're men of God, supposedly.
So you think
Everybody trying to get this message and feels like they can't get the message for themselves. They need some like in-between person who wears a dress.
Do you think because these men sort of pander to the women, like, hey, you pray hard enough, God can send you a husband, and they believe that dream?
There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that, and this sort of like false prophesying and making these promises that are very, very strange. But it's just we're used to having somebody else be in control and someone else make decisions and tell us what to do, and it's a comfortable place to be. It's a really comfortable place to be. And if you paid any attention to Equality Bahamas and our campaign around the referendum, we never once said people should vote yes. Obviously, we wanted people to vote yes. That was my personal position, and that was the position of the organization. But I was very firm that if we practice this bunch of shit, we practice us, we continue practicing us,
Hey.
telling people how to vote, we're never going to get to the place where people are thinking critically, thinking for themselves, and expanding democracy. Thinking about what you want, what your vision is for this country, what your vision is for yourself and for your family, and deciding what the actions are that we need to be taking individually, as a community, as society, whatever, as a government, because we're all the government, right? We're all supposed to be participating in the government. If we don't create that, if we don't create that sort of culture, and we continue to not only buy into, but perpetuate this idea that somebody has to tell you what to do, then it's pointless. I could get everybody to vote yes because I told them to vote yes, but what does that really mean when something else comes up, when we need to work on issues of marital rape, when we need to work on domestic violence bill, when we need to work on mental health? You know, consistently telling people what to do is not working. It's a short-term thing, but we really need to be empowering people to think for themselves, find the resources that they need to be able to educate themselves and make decisions that make sense, not just for them, but for all of us as a whole. And I think we should be able to see now, especially over a year into a pandemic, how important it is to recognize that we're connected, whether we want to be or not, and we're interdependent. Because if I'm vaccinated and you're not vaccinated, I'm no more free than I was before I got vaccinated, really, because I still got to share space with you.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing that we're looking at, again, in a really holistic way, in a feminist way, and encouraging people, like I said, to think for themselves about what they want. And that's something that the church does not encourage. That's something that school doesn't encourage. You go to school to learn and you can't ask no questions.
Encourages that as the whole, and I think a lot of people are comfortable within the system. Let's just look at people who work in the hotel industry. That's just the biggest modern day plantations. However, you like that check. You like going to work and having free 3 meals a day. I just mean like, okay, when I go to work, I get free lunch, free breakfast, free dinner. I get benefits. I get this. I get that. I get that. I'm not going to do anything to disrupt the system because the system working for me.
Not only that, but you're tired. Because that one job with your little benefits and then your little government job might not help you make ends meet, really. If you have 3-4 children, you know, because you can't get a flicking abortion. So you just got to keep having these children if you were raped, if the condom broke, anything, right? You got to keep having these children. Nobody's going to help you. There's no real social assistance. There's no real social safety net. And to send all these children to school, you feel like your children aren't safe in the government school, or the government school isn't good enough, so you got to send them to private school, which is a whole other story, right? But it's expensive to live. And so most people aren't making it on one income and not even making it on two incomes if somebody else is in the house. So you have a full-time job, and a lot of people have another job on the side. People have side hustles, people baking cakes and doing all manner of things to try to make extra money. Where is the space in there to read the newspaper and to Google something to find out what it means, or to find out what the hell is in this vaccine? Like, there's no space. So you dependent on the person who you give 10% of your income to and who you hear from every week because you trust that person to tell you what to do. Like, we've created a space where people just do not have the time or the energy to think for themselves.
I still feel like most people don't want to do it.
Yeah, and they got to take it upon themselves too.
Yeah, because it's like
as much as they do, they still got to.
Like me and you sort of started talking about this earlier, like over text. Information, you have information by the touch of your phone.
Right.
Every day, you see people constantly on Facebook and all these different social platforms. You posting all kind of foolishness. Instead, you could take that time and go and.
You have misinformation on your phone too, though.
That's true.
And there's a lot of information, but you have to know how to access it.
Yeah.
You have to know what you're searching for, because you could easily Google something right now and get The Onion and don't know you're reading The Onion. There's a lot of things like that. How many of your family members do you know who has called you so far to ask you how to do the health visa?
Nobody.
The health visa is not hard. But because it's something they've never done before, or because they went to it and it looked like a lot of things to fill in, they're just like, Lord, let me call my niece. Let me call my grandson, right? Because these things are intimidating for people. And I think we're consistently putting pressure on people, or putting the onus on individuals to find information for themselves. And to me, it makes way more sense for the people who have time on their hands, the people who have the skills to do this research, to do it, pull it together in a little one-pager, forward that just like you forward others on WhatsApp for people to be able to share it. That makes way more sense to me than expecting 400,000 people to individually find the time to do the kind of research that it takes to get accurate information. Yeah, but no one is doing that. No one is doing the work of educating the public. We say in that, we upset. People don't know things. People don't understand things. People aren't doing the right thing. What are you doing to make it possible for people to do the right thing?
Yeah, but that's the point of the system.
I mean,
that's the system.
That's what I try to tell you. That's why they keep you in this loop.
Yeah, but I mean, we basically going back and forth around the same thing. It's like, but the system wants us to be dumb.
Yep.
However,
they want you tired and dejected and apathetic.
Yeah, because that's the best way to control.
Yep.
So,
that's how they can keep taking turns being in power. Very nicely, very politely. Every 5 years, they bow and say, on to you. See you in 5 years. And the next one, on to you. See you in 5 years.
That's very true. So, on to another hot topic, hot button issue. So, you was mentioning rape culture consistently. And on this podcast and my other podcasts, I've talked about, how I feel like majority of my lady friends have experienced some sort of sexual assault, sexual harassment at some point in their lives, whether it be at them as children or even into their adulthood. And I'm like, what's going on there? Because it's like, there's no way every other week I'll have these deep conversations with different ladies, and they'll be like, yo, this happened. And I feel like, why I've been so blind to this for such a long time. But then people argue like, well, why they don't come out and say something or this and that and that. But it ain't as easy like that because there's emotional trauma behind it. There's a feeling of, I don't want to disrupt the flow and cause drama and cause things to happen between the family or go into court and go through all of this. So they discourage seeking justice. Or for years, they'll be like, well, that didn't happen until they sit down and be like, that situation did happen like that, even though other times with an individual was consensual, it was just with this one instance that it wasn't. So, they compartmentalize it. But I was like, it's sort of dark raising a daughter. Like, if I had a daughter, raising her in this environment to where, okay, you trying to be right the wrongs of the past and say, hey, You don't have to feel the need to succumb to certain pressures or have certain things to be dictated to you. But then, society going society.
Society
Yep.
gone society.
Yeah.
Yep. Rape culture is so real, and we know the phrase victim blaming, but we continue to do it because it's just so easy. It's just so easy. And that whole why didn't you report it or why didn't you report it sooner is a part of victim blaming, because it suggests that you could have done something to like ease your own pain or to heal your own trauma, not realizing that reporting is its own trauma, especially around here, because the police suck. We don't really have very many systems of support for people who've experienced that kind of trauma and been hurt in that way. So, I've assisted a number of people with reporting, and there's no connection between ministries, between departments. So you have to consistently go to all these different places. So you go to the police and you make your report, and hopefully that, you don't get too much pushback in your reporting process. And then you have to go to a clinic or a hospital, or sometimes it happens in the reverse, a separate location to sort of tell the story again and to get whatever help you need. And then you basically have to figure out for yourself, unless you get a really good nurse or, whatever, to tell you, here's the number for the crisis center or something like that. You have to figure out for yourself where you're going to find the other kind of support that you need. If it's a situation where you need to leave your home, you're trying to figure out who you could tell, where can you stay? We have very limited shelters here, often full. So, who's going to get you a hotel room? Who can you stay with? Who's not going to tell the person that you're staying with them? Are they going to see your car parked outside? Being in a small society like this, it's really, really difficult. It's really hard. And for some people, it's easier to just shut off this part of yourself and pretend like it didn't happen, or it happened in a different way, or that there was some confusion, or that you actually
Liked it.
consented.
Yeah.
But I think one of the big issues that we have around sexual violence, and I don't think we're going to be able to address it until we face this issue, is that we're not really doing proper sex ed, and we're not talking about the true components of sex in a full way. So when we talk about sex and the difference between sex and rape, we often say that there has to be consent. If there's consent, then it's sex. If it's not consent, then it's rape. But we don't talk about pleasure.
How does pleasure?
Particularly, we don't talk about women's pleasure.
Okay. So how does pleasure factor in? Like, break that down for me.
Because sex is supposed to be enjoyable for the people who are having sex, right? But in a lot of what we see on TV and movies and things that we consider progressive, sex ends when the man ejaculates, right? Like, oh, well, that's that. Okay, but I'm still here, and I'm still waiting. There's not, everyone's not a gentleman to wait until the woman comes first or whatever. But there are other ways to get there. For a lot of women, penetration is not going to do it. Are we having those conversations? Are we talking about what pleases us when we're engaging in sexual activity with a new person? And are we talking about the importance of pleasure and pleasure as an end goal to sex? Because a lot of us have been taught that the end goal is for the man to finish or to procreate. So by leaving pleasure out, we allow those two myths or pieces of misinformation to just continue to linger and to be disseminated more and more and more. But pleasure is really key to sex and to enjoying sex and to people wanting to continue to engage in sexual activity. And if we teach that from a young age, the same way that we teach that, you need to use a condom, the ABCs of safe sex, getting tested, and consent, then people will understand that I'm supposed to enjoy sex. Not only me saying, yes, let's do this, makes it a good experience for me. So you will have that 16 or 17-year-old girl who's having sex with her boyfriend of the same age, who will know that, yeah, I did say yes, but I actually didn't.
I like it.
I didn't like it.
So for those who may be wondering, are you saying that if a woman didn't feel pleasure during the experience of sex, she should be able to possibly call rape?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just make that clear for the people who might be wondering
No.
out there.
Because that's the next thing I was going to ask. So I was
No.
like,
So the connection there is
yeah.
we can talk about marital rape, right?
Right.
So the idea that the pushback on marital rape, one of the main pieces of the pushback from religious leaders, conservative religious leaders, fundamentalists, is that the woman belongs to the husband, right? Like all kinds of problems with that women belong to the husband, that the woman gives consent forever and ever when they get married because the two become one, whatever nonsense, right? So even if we were to accept that the woman gave consent, what about the pleasure component? Is she doomed, because she married this man, is she doomed to a life of pleasureless sex? And would the conversation be different if we talked more about the centrality of pleasure in sexual activity? Because if you're not having sex to have children, then shouldn't we enjoy it?
Even if you're having sex with children, you should enjoy it.
I mean,
any which other way,
yeah.
for real.
I mean, a lot of people who are really trying don't tend to enjoy it after a while because it's just like, it's time. But yeah, I think that we need to talk more about pleasure. And the more that we talk about pleasure, the more people will have an ownership of that experience and feel comfortable to say, even if you 5 point pumps in, that this don't feel good. This isn't what I want. Can we try another position? Can we get some more lube? Can we do this? Can we do that?
I think that conversation would lead into even other things, because if you only can last like 5 minutes, that's something physically.
Hey.
You have the chance, so that lead into physical health, which will lead into mental health, which will lead into all kind of other different conversations.
Hey,
that we
Justin,
spark.
it's a deep conversation, no pun intended.
But even if you know that you only last 5 minutes, maybe you should start thinking about how you can
Do
give
other
pleasure
In other
before
ways. Yeah,
you
that's
get
true.
your 5 minutes in.
That's very true.
Right? But
Yeah.
we're not talking about, the conversation isn't
that's
really
true. Ain't
happening in a lot of
nobody
relationships.
honestly really talking about that for real. For
So
real.
you think if we center and learn more about pleasure,
Yeah.
then we would understand things such as marital rape, that would change some of the dynamics of that.
I think we'll have a better understanding of what rape is. Not to say that any kind of sex without pleasure is rape, but it will help us to find that line better if rape, as it mostly takes place, is between people who know each other, or people
Indeed.
who are dating, or people who are in a relationship. You know that you didn't want this to happen tonight, but this person said you told this person earlier that, yeah, tonight when y'all go out, after y'all go out, when y'all get home, this is gonna happen. And then the night comes and you just don't want to do it. But then this person is making you feel like you're obligated to do it, and so you relent.
Or you feel coerced.
Which is not really consent, right? If it's under duress.
Right.
But on top of that, you do not enjoy the experience at all. This person isn't even trying to give you any pleasure. It kind of removes that cloud of, oh, but I said it was okay. You realize that this isn't something that I wanted. I didn't enjoy it at all. There was no consent. There was no concern for me. There was no pleasure. And it kind of moves you out of this place of being obligated to participate in this thing with this person, understanding that sex is not for that person. We talk about sex like it's a gift. You give it to somebody, but you're supposed to be getting something from the experience as well.
Yeah, because I remember, rest his soul, Dr. Indians always say sex is just mutual masturbation. But, people have it like a gift, basically, because, especially today, women are putting a price on it. More, like, not just the sex workers and things like that. Average women putting a price, like, no, you forget this, you got to do X, Y, and Z for me.
Well, it's not new. Sex has pretty much always been transactional. Women back in the day have sex with the husband so that he could buy the new vacuum to make
Whatever
cleaning the
fine.
house easier. This is the one thing to calm him down or to get him to do a certain or to take it a little bit easier or be less angry that my sister's coming to visit and she's staying with us. So we're gonna have sex, and when we're done, I'm gonna be like, so my sister's coming. He's gonna say, okay, versus the 15 minutes of screaming and shouting back and forth. Sex has always been used as a bargaining chip.
Coercion.
And now it might be a little bit more overt,
Yeah.
which could be a good thing. Sometimes it can be a frustrating thing to watch and to experience with people sort of towing that line between sex work or transactional, well, sex work and transactional sex within a relationship. I mean, we have lots of people who are sugaring, but it's your body. Do what you want to do as long as other people involved are happy with it and being pleasured.
So, how do you take the notion of? Because when I brought up your names of certain people, they was like, "Oh, the feminists." I'm like, "Yeah,
That's good.
I'm
branding. It's working.
Yeah, 'cause do you feel like that might be putting you in a box or?
No. Some people might see it as a box if they don't really understand what feminism is. So feminism still gets a bad rap, right? There's still this idea of the bra-burning, man-hating feminist, which there are probably men I hate, and I haven't burned any bras, but I'm not friends with them, So some of that stuff might be true for me, but to me, feminism is about focusing on equality in many different spheres, including economic, political, social, and seeing women, people of all genders, having access to the same opportunities and the same resources as men, and being committed to that, like in my life, not just in my advocacy, not just in my professional endeavors, but in life in general, and paying attention to the way that I treat people and that I see other people being treated and how that's related to their gender, and looking at policy, looking at our democracy, looking, for example, at, we have general elections coming up, and none of these shitty parties, the main ones, have 30% of their slates as women. Not even 30%.
Why do you think that's the case?
I mean, because they are misogynistic.
Okay.
We know this, and yes, I am including the one that has a woman as a leader. They're at their foundation. They are misogynistic parties. They do not support women's rights, and they don't care to bring balance. They don't care to improve conditions for women. You don't see it last election, 2017. You didn't see anything about gender in any of their proposals, right? The FNM has its manifesto. The PLP has its charter for governance. I cannot remember what the DNA called their thing. But none of them mention gender. None of them mention women. They all look at crime. They look at youth. They look at health. They look at education.
Because I think they always do things based on the reflection of what the average Bahamian wants.
I don't even know if they...
Because that's what they always plan to do.
do.
That's why every election is always jobs.
Yeah, they keep it as vague as possible.
Yeah.
Jobs, crime, youth. It's always something to do with youth in there.
Yeah.
And that's about it. The same thing recycled every single time.
But immigration.
Yeah.
But even if we look at those things, right? If we look at jobs, crime, and youth, there's a gender perspective there to be had. So what kinds of jobs does the government usually provide? Getting close to the election, it's all this paving the road, putting in new sidewalks. Who's getting that work?
And construction ending, right? Yeah.
Men getting that work. Are you creating jobs for women? Or you just expect women to just fry fritters to make a couple of dollars? If we look at crime, who are the victims of crime?
Man.
A lot of men.
Yeah.
So
violent crime.
And how is that related to the jobs that you just decided to create
You're trying
at
to take
the last
the
minute?
criminals from the crime to the jobs, basically.
But they don't connect those things.
I think that's why they have them, because they always interlap. Well, the youth going down bad and they committing the crime, so we need to get the men to work.
But do you see the connection in those manifestos and in the policies and the programs that they actually that they put forward and implement? Those connections, you don't see them. They're not looking at the intersections of these issues. Looking at education, there are the scholarships. Are you providing scholarships to encourage women to go into the STEM fields? All these little specific things that the government should be looking at. It's really not. And none of the political parties are putting forward anything that's better because they don't care.
Yeah. And I think they sort of do, but it's sort of hush-hush, because I know Frankie Campbell had a Women in STEM camp earlier this year, but it was like, I didn't know this was going
Every
on.
now and then they have a little blip.
Yeah.
A little blip. The Department of Gender and Family Affairs on the day of the girl child will be all, yay, girls, for one day. And it's like, well, we have girls 365 days a year, though. Only one day you're going to focus on the girls? It has to be integrated, and that's the purpose. That's the wheelhouse of the gender expert, is to look at the gender dimensions of these different issues that we're dealing with on a daily basis in the country, and how we can actually address some of those with law and with policy. So, I mean, I'm going to plug one of the projects that Equality Bahamas is working on right now, which is inviting people to engage with us in conversations and some collaborative working sessions, and to fill out a survey to contribute to feminist standards for governance. So we're looking at 7 thematic areas: health, education, women and LGBT people, youth, environment, labor and economy, and social services. So you can contribute to any of these areas and talk about some of the issues that you see, things that you think that we should be doing moving forward, so that we can produce our own charter, our own manifesto, so that, no matter who wins the next election, we have this list of demands and we say, hey, this is what you need to do. And we've broken down the projects, the laws that need to change, the policies that need to be put in place to move us forward, and giving due consideration to critical areas that we've identified, including gender equality, gender-based violence specifically, climate change, and disaster management.
I got 2 more questions before we close up, because this has been part of, I just been sitting back, learning, shutting my mouth, and letting the expert go in. So, I've heard this term a lot, especially in 2020, and I'm going to use this phrase, and you're going to tell me what this really means. He hates men. I mean, he hates women.
He
Break
hates
that down.
women.
Yeah, break that down for me. That's it?
Break it down?
Yeah.
He hates women.
Uh-huh.
So that's basically misogyny, hatred of women, which can mean so many different things, but it's basically, it can be objectification of women, it can be subjugation of women, it can be just generally not wanting women in your space, or only wanting them in your space to serve your particular purpose. And I'm using serve in that sort of like servant way.
Okay. Because I always would say, okay, because like I say, I've been doing a lot of damage. For those viewing, the reason why I was causing mayhem in them groups is for this day. Learn and do like my little social experiments. I probably done.
Yeah, Dan.
But, I always would see, okay, you post something, oh, he hates women. And then, so I always ask the question, so is it he hates women because he say, y'all can't do this or that, or it's not even gender, it's just like, oh, I don't think you should have ice cream. Or he hates women because he don't want, like, so I'm like, okay, so what exactly?
So when people say he hates women, a lot of times it's in response to something that somebody has said or done that on the surface, to someone who's not really paying attention, might just seem like an innocuous thing or something that's rude or mean, but whatever. But someone is looking at that and seeing where that's coming from, like digging for the root of it, right? So let me try to think of a recent example.
I mean, I got a recent example.
Okay, what is it?
I can show you a video.
Oh, we going that deep?
Oh, no, I ever show you this video?
I don't know.
Oh, man. So, we always have a review thing. I can shout out the person who I go add the clip in. So recently, a Bahamian lady went on. Have you ever heard of Kevin Samuels?
Of what?
You ever heard of Kevin Samuels?
No.
Okay, that's surprising because everybody knows about it. Anyway, a Bahamian lady recently went on this show, and he basically was breaking down. She was with a guy who was divorced before, but she wanted to prolong them getting married because she wanted to go finish her education and get her master's degree and blah, 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 blah. That's the only information I'm about to give you so you can react to this in real time without knowing anything prior about any party.
Okay.
So,
I saw the
the
video, so I
government.
know what you mean.
So that's your man. Another woman to be raising your children, you might as well kick it with the daycare runner or the nanny. All he would get with you is a womb and a product. He would get no spouse. He would get no helpmate. He get nothing. Tell me I'm wrong.
I'm not gonna tell you I'm wrong. I asked you your opinion. So
Well, the point is, ma'am, you're not going to be what he wants. He doesn't even want you to, because my thing is, why do you need to become a research analyst if you want to be his wife?
okay, let me break it down into the Bahamas term. As a police officer and as a research analyst,
Talk to me like I'm 4. Why do you need to become a research analyst? Why do you need to go out and have a whole career if you want to be his wife?
I want to have a career because I feel like I don't want to depend 100% on a man. I feel like I want to
listen, gentlemen.
I want to make my
live
own
reaction.
income. However,
this is fear. This is the fear I was talking about.
However,
can't trust black men, so I gotta have
no,
a
I
backup
trust
plan.
him. I trust him. I 100%.
Then if you you already said he's attractive and successful, but you still need to work and have your own money so you can have some degree of autonomy and independence. That's not a relationship. That's 2 individuals. That's independence. Buy a dog.
Well, we talk about it, and
there's no talking about it.
Okay.
This is why our women are so chronically single, because every other group of women realize that they need to be with their men. They don't say I'm with the man and I want you to wait.
Like this thing was like way long. It's just a cut from.
It wasn't my idea though. If he want to get married today, I'll get married to him. But it wasn't my idea.
No, you want to go, but you want the PhD.
I do, but I don't have to get it. It's something that I want to do. I don't have to get it. My thing is, I want to be educated, and I want to.
No. How old are you?
I'm 24.
You're educated.
Okay, I'm educated.
You got more education than your grandmother, your great grandmother had. Just go ahead and say it. You want power. You want your own money, a degree of independence, and all this other kind of stuff. In case
we're gonna have this like right here. you still recording, right?
Yeah, we still recording.
Which is a bull cover story for the other part.
I will be making more money than him, and I feel like it will help
then
our
get a
family
wife.
more. It'll help our family
then
more.
Get a wife.
To get a wife? I don't like women.
Might as well, because this is very masculine.
I want a man, and we have a.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. From the we never put out that full thing. React.
Yeah, so this guy definitely hates women. He's misogynistic, and he takes the view that women are supposed to be dependent on men, and that women are not our own people. Like, a woman is not a human being who has her own desires, her own goals, her own interests. Like, you're supposed to just collapse into the life of a man and fit into whatever he has going on, and completely dismisses the idea that, or the right to have independent security. And this is one of the things that predators do, is that they make sure that you don't have anything else. You have nothing to fall back on, so that things go sideways, or when I treat you the way that I really want to treat you, like garbage, like object, like the thing that I think you are, you don't have anywhere to run to, and you have to stick around and you have to take it.
Okay. I'm gonna ask a question so women have been thinking just as what you just described for the last 50 years. But some are trying to figure out today why the marriage rate is going down, the divorce rate is going up, and
that's not a mystery.
Okay, why is that not a mystery?
What is the purpose of getting married at this point?
Actually, get into that. I like you going
there. Whole new board now.
I like you going there. Get into that.
Way over time.
Because there's some men that say, "Bro, don't get married," and there's no point in getting married anymore.
There are no advantages to it, aside from, unless you're really looking to build something together, like financially, there are some benefits to being able to pool resources if that's something that you want to do and you trust the other person to that level to pool all your resources and share debt and share assets and all that kind of thing, then it could make sense. For some people, they want to have the same last name. To me, you could do that without marriage. You could just go and
Change
do
the
a
last
deed
name,
poll and
right.
just change your last name. And for some people, it's more of a religious thing, or to massage their families and make their families accept a person, or a social thing to get people to accept their union and to make it official. But one-on-one in real terms, marriage just really isn't that beneficial, especially in the Bahamas. When you get married, then apparently you could get raped. So why would you do that?
Wow.
So we have love then.
You could have love without marriage. I think you could probably have
Definitely.
more love without marriage. In
Definitely
fact, you
do.
could have infinite love without marriage and without living together. Let's be neighbors. You go to your place, I go to my place. When we want to get together, we get together, and it's a choice. It's a intentional choice that we make every single time. You know, we're close enough that if we need something, we could holler at each other. But you have your space. You could keep your kitchen how you want to keep your kitchen. Mine's going to be the way I like it, with the sponge on the left and the dawn on the right, or, you know,
Right.
whatever it is. Why not?
And on that, we about to, any final words? What's next for you? And all them good things.
Final words, definitely don't get married.
Wow.
Don't do that. Divorce is expensive. You lose half your It just,
Sorry for
doesn't
y'all.
make any sense.
Sorry for y'all out there. We thought y'all was gonna make it. Don't. Because y'all can get divorced. And divorce is expensive. Real talks.
I'm sure some people will make it. Some people making it, but it depends on your reasons, really. But I just,
Right.
there are too many cons there to me. What's next for me? Continuing along these same lines, doing the same it up consistently, and working on
I like her.
working on the feminist standards for governance. Really looking for more people that participate in the process. And I keep telling people that, you know, me and my team, we could sit down and bang out policy all day, right? Like we could spend 2 days and just bang it out by ourselves. But that's not the point. The point is to engage other people and to find out how other people are thinking about health, about education, about youth, about social services, about all these different issues. What do people think? What are the ideas that people have to combat climate change, gender-based violence, and how can we do better at disaster management? We really want to crowdsource the best ideas, hear from people about the issues that they think we should be tackling, to develop something that not only advocates can use over the next 5 years, that the government can use as a sort of checklist in terms of what the people want, and that we can use as a collective to measure the performance of the inevitably people that we're going to have as our representatives very shortly.
She said a mouthful. Oh man, but thank you again, Alicia, for coming on Erryting Kool. We only have the legends, you know. Only the legends. We happy to have another legendary member of our society with us again. All our links, how you can find her, and we can put all your information down in the description. And thank y'all for joining us on Erryting Kool. Peace, love. Yeah, see.